Got Jay Schimpf of Authenticus. I got Andrew Antar and John Godfrey. Where is everybody? Andrew. Yeah, let's do that. Is that everybody? Is there one more person? I'll moderate the panel. That's good.
All set.
Just press record. That's all you have to do. All right. All right. Well, it's breaking down here, and all three of you. If you guys want to sit down, you can join us and enjoy it.
You also took the wrong mic.
Yeah, there we go. You want to sit? You got to sit down. You got to watch this. It's going to be amazing.
This is the best panel of the
The
day.
future of pornography and cryptocurrency,
Yeah.
right?
Pornography.
It's gonna
Pornography,
be amazing.
crypto. All right, so our mission today is to talk about AI generate content, the future of AI, and what it means to work as a content creator, as a PR person, as a marketer, as a salesperson in a world where all AI has essentially eaten your jobs. Not my job, because I'm fine, but you guys are done. So why don't we talk about that?
Well, ChatGPT could eat your job too.
Eventually, yeah, but I'm a mess anyway.
I mean, until it can sit up here and do what you do right now, and all that beauty and love that you're projecting to the audience. I don't know, man.
So introduce yourselves and let's get to it.
Hi, I'm John Godfrey, founder and season residence at Bennu Solutions.
I'm Andrew Antar, founder of Tune.fm.
I'm the least interesting. My name is Eric Villines. I do global communications for Anker Innovations.
All right. So the primary question, I mean, it's generally everybody's thinking about this right now. What do we do when a lot of the creative arts, the creative aspects of our jobs are replaced by AI? Are we worried about this right now? And in your specific position, what do you think is going to happen in terms of your industries? So why don't you can start and we'll go this way.
Sure. Well, I'll start off and say I'm not worried, right? Because I think it's really just going to force us to raise the bar. So some of those routinized things that maybe were lower quality, lower value, those are going to be able to be automated or taken care of with AI. And then I think it's going to raise the collective consciousness and force us all to become more creative, more interesting, and produce better and deeper content.
So it's funny they said that AI and all this like new tech will basically make like low skilled labor like obsolete, but really and they're saying the most valuable thing will be like the creatives in the future, but it's the opposite that happened, that the AI is attacking the creatives first. And so like you don't really need to be a digital artist, you can just like come up with a prompt. And so now the real skill that is valuable is prompt engineering. How do you talk to the AI in such a way that you get the most interesting results? Because there's a lot of ways to get like trash content from the AI. But I have a friend who's been doing the tinkering with this for the last few months, and he just won a competition for the coolest AI-generated content, and it's some sort of like fashionable grandma or something that's like a really interesting image that he's like really good at this prompt engineering. You say all these things like 4K, this and that, vibrant colors, whatever. And it's sort of like a weird language of talking to the AI. So it's more about how do you tame the AI and how do you make it work for you. And so there's a creativity there, and I think that's what's really going to drive value.
Okay. Now, Eric, you're talking about it from a different standpoint. You're talking about it from almost a marketing standpoint, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're using it today. I think what you said earlier, it's like, I don't want to say low value or low things, but I mean, let's say that we're in the middle of a recall on a product, and there's a lot of different stakeholders and moving parts and communication that you're creating. You've sort of created the abstract already. and then you can feed it into the AI, let's say customer service. You've got 10,000 permutations of questions that are going to come in, and you can sort of engineer a response through AI. And I've actually found that really, really valuable and time consuming. You're talking about prompting, and unfortunately it's hard to say that sucks, write it better. So you have to learn how to, can you use less adverbs, or can you remove the second sentence, or so it is an art form. You're trying to train an AI that really is beyond your control because you're using someone else's AI. But right now I find it very, very valuable as long as the abstract is created. I think as long as you know where you're going. We're at a stage right now where you still need editorial, you still need human intervention, you need empathy, and certain elements that AI doesn't have. But it's interesting to see, it feels like overnight, in really the last few months, we have a tool at our disposable, it is a disposable tool. We have a tool at our disposal that is immediately valuable if you use it the right way.
So my view on AI is it's basically like a flower. It's really pretty to bees, humans, other bugs, all this other it's really nice, but it's not implicitly beautiful. It hasn't built itself to be beautiful. How do we as humans look past that surface aspect of a model that can talk to us in a very, I guess, almost like a human way, and work with that and incorporate that into our experiences? How do we incorporate that into our businesses?
So look forward a little bit further. Right now, I think you as a writer are looking at something as sort of static. I write something and it's done. But imagine in the future, we still have chatbots, right? We have chatbots for customer service, but they're not powered by AI. They're barely even powered by algorithms. They're just very basic scripted responses. But if you were to go to an AI and you have a particular problem, you're asking questions, and that response becomes more and more personalized to your unique needs. And I think that's where, so right now we're looking at art, or or in my case, a customer service response, or, something very flat and it's not going to change. But I think that as we engineer the ability to communicate with people on a customer service level, have you ever read directions to an IKEA table? And it's the most confounding thing you've ever read in your life, and you're like, come on, this is ridiculous. I bet you $1 million I could put it into a chat, but one of these AI things, and it could make it 1,000 times better. So there are a lot of practical, benign things that we can be using for right now. I think in the future, we can look at customer service and interaction. We can take companies that don't have the ability, a startup that doesn't have the ability to hire an outside firm to do customer service. They can have an AI do customer service and be on par instantly with a large giant company. And that's where things get exciting, and that's, I think, when we create parity, and these become very valuable services.
So when ChatGPT became the fastest growing, most viral product ever, Google internally called like a code red, and they're like, oh shit, oh sorry. But basically they had this moment where like, wait a second, our core business can be disrupted overnight, just like that, poof. When I put a prompt into ChatGPT,
search, right?
Yeah, search, yeah, I get a better, more valuable, more accurate response. I was looking up like, oh, what's a good multiple for this type of tech company? Put that into Google, I get a bunch of like nonsense, no good answer, and then I put it into ChatGPT and I have like this like perfectly constructed intellectual argument with like references, and I was like, I didn't need 100 answers, I needed one good one, And so, but it's not just the text, it's all of media. So like when NFTs blew up, it was generative art, that like Bored Apes Yacht Club, that type of thing. And that's just like taking a bunch of slices of a photo and creating a bunch of different, basically apes or whatever. But now with generative art, with DALL-E and Midjourney, like architecture firms are being disrupted. You could do NFT projects with AI-generated art. There's AI-generated videos. They have this concept of AI dreaming, where the video just keeps creating new stuff, and it's like a very trippy thing. And then the most interesting thing, because I'm in the music business, is AI generated music. What's that going to look like in the future? And that with NFTs and, so I think we're just, scratching the surface as to what is going to happen, because it really touches every single industry. It's not just consumer, it's also business efficiency operations.
I mean, you talked about music. It's interesting because I'm old. And so, electronica, I mean, I'm 54. Electronica precedes me even. But as electronic music started to come into vogue, musicians were whining about, oh, electronic music is going to take away music. But it didn't. Scribes, I'm sure, were paranoid when the printing press came into establishment. So every generation, it's there, but there's still a human intervention. There's still a filter, right? Sorry, you were going to say.
Yeah, I just add, I agree with you. I think the boilerplate content stuff, that's where this can really shine and excel, bring people up on par. Your notion about customer service, I think, is really interesting, right? Like the extent to which we can start taking the data we have on customer journey and experience with us and maybe contextualizing that through AI, so then we can have a more relevant conversation via our AI programs with that customer, I think is a really interesting concept. Now, to be a little bit edgy here, since I'm the cyber guy, I do think the idea of data sovereignty in some of these programs is going to be important, and the extent to which we feed it our data and how much control and localization do we have over our own data in that program versus it being diffused out everywhere else. Because that's going to touch on things like copyright or IP or plagiarism and some of the challenges we've already seen early on with some of the chat GPT style things.
That's where blockchain comes into it. I think the most interesting thing is the intersection of decentralized networks with AI and how those things will interoperate. And so when you have decentralized identity and protocols that can track like certain content, like lawyers are freaking out about AI because they're like, well, how are you attributing this content if you're just literally copying it from like 100 different sources, but in a way creating a derivative work? Like they're going nuts over this, and there's lawsuits all over. But I think that blockchain, Web3, and AI generative media is a really interesting intersection of how things might play out.
So the thinking is that I NFT my paragraph, and if AI uses that paragraph to build something else, I should be able to get a cut. So we've created sort of like a micro, content system that works.
Yeah, so it's like having the stem of a song. For example, I can AI generate a beat, right, and then sell that as an NFT, and then use that, generate a new song based on that. And have the attribution and the payments all split automatically. And it's very complex to build a system to do that, but you can think about ways that can manifest itself. It's interesting.
Are you looking to me?
No, if you want to add to that, you can.
I have nothing to add.
What does you absolutely, you have nothing to add to this. What does the world look like in 30 years from your standpoints, right? What does music look like? What does security look like? What does I guess hardware production look like? 30 years.
You're looking at me again.
I'm looking at you.
Okay,
Do it.
I listened to what you said. I'm going to say right now, because I think there are some things that are happening right now that are kind of interesting and disturbing at the same time. So let's take AI outside of the equation of creation, and let's look at AI in terms of research and development. So right now, today, we have the ability for AI to swarm essentially consumer comments, reviews, a variety of things, and to come back with, as you mentioned, a short list, very like one answer or two or three things, and say, hey, here is the most predominant issue people are having with X, or here is the biggest opportunity that we see with X. And R&D labs at major companies right now can take that information and very quickly start developing products or features that address those things. And that's incredible. They use the entire world, multiple languages. Look at every Yelp review or Amazon review online and be able to crawl that and analyze that information and come down with 2 to 3 bullet points. And that is happening right now. That's a great thing for the consumer because it means companies can create products that are more relevant to them. However, it does you ponder what does it mean to the entrepreneur or the independent inventor. And so, although I do think that the companies, by and large, are going to start thinking about mass consumer products, the inventor and the entrepreneur can still think about niche products and new ideas. It is something that we can't control. Cat's out of the bag. But it is something that we need to discuss. And then on the other side, we have to be clear that AI is already developing products that are better. I love to cook. I live a low-carb, high-fat lifestyle. But anyone that opens the refrigerator and realizes, oh my God, there's all this wilted salad and tomatoes that have gone bad, and I had the best intentions 2 weeks ago when I bought everything, and I didn't cook any of it. And I noticed that Samsung released an AI refrigerator at CES, and I was like, that is what I need, right? Because you're buying stuff, put it in the refrigerator, it's analyzing the contents, it's telling you, you bought some tomatoes like a week ago, they're going to go bad pretty soon. And so that's already a tangible, valuable way that AI can be integrated into a product. We create security systems that do facial recognition, but we take it a step further. It's true AI machine learning, not an algorithm, where it's looking at everyone that comes up to your door. It's looking at the mailman. It's looking at things. The whole purpose and all this information is going into the system so it will not bother you. Literally, all this power, all this technology is there so it will leave you alone. And then when someone comes up to your door that you don't recognize, then it will ping you. Or if it sees a car with a license plate that isn't yours, then it will ping you. So there are amazing things that are happening on the product side, but I do think we, similar to ID and all of that stuff, where's the consumer's voice here? All these reviews, all these things out there, and we can freely mine all this stuff and come up with great products. So two sides of a totally different coin, but a lot to unpack.
So 30 years from now, I think we'll probably have already passed artificial general intelligence, or basically the singularity. So that's a whole nother thing. But maybe 5 to 10 years from now, I think AI is going to move into a more personalized AI type of paradigm where you can get personalized content for exactly your taste. Like your taste in music, you can generate music that's exactly what you want to hear. Your aesthetic taste, you can generate content and post it that's exactly the kind of thing you want to see or look at. And also your writing style, you can basically have articles written as you. Like basically you could write an article and have it John Big style, And so the personalized AI of being able to analyze not just all the data on the internet and create this sort of general, somebody that's a little bit of everyone, something that's more like you personally and your unique, what you bring to the table, your unique spin on things. One way to use the prompts is say, write this in the style of X, and generate this art in the style of this artist, or write this ChatGPT thing in the style of this writer. And
I write this customer letter in the Lord Byron.
So yeah, writing it as a style of me, or write this music in the style of what I like.
So I think the first thought is offense and defense, right? So from a cyber perspective, we're going to start to see more use of AI. We're going to see it used both in a defensive capacity. How do we protect our organizations, which is great, but we're going to see a shift too, right? The whole idea of hack back, if you will, that's kind of been lurking in the background a little bit, and the extent to which AI may automatically trigger on concepts like that. And so I think about this tit for tat, this back and forth that may start to occur with offense and defense. And then I think too about the early days of high frequency trading in the financial markets, right? We had the flash crashes. We saw what can happen there. So I do think there's a piece there we really have to keep an eye on, and we got to figure out how do we architect that and continue to train it in a way that doesn't cause other problems. And then I think the idea of use of force continuum and where that fits into some of this offensive capability is really going to be a critical piece when we think about 30 years into the future. And to what extent will AI be able to make some of those decisions about use of force on its own, through maybe an automated risk assessment, which hopefully we've got that right at that point as well. But those are the areas that I see on the horizon. We're already using AI for consuming and ingesting a bunch of logs and really helping our analysts with alert fatigue and everything else. that's just the tip of the iceberg. The extent to which we really say, let's turn it on full auto and let it do its thing, that's where we're headed, and I think there's some pieces we got to be worried about there.
So I think this goes into my next question. Somebody mentioned on stage earlier that the idea is we're not entering the fourth industrial revolution. We're entering the first almost intellectual revolution. Now, do we come out of this in a dystopia or utopia? And there's a lot to be said for both possibilities. Like if your company knows that I really like, I don't know, coolers that can fly, you're going to make me a cooler that can fly, and you're going to make me a song that sounds exactly what I want, but then there's some songwriter somewhere who doesn't make any money out of that, and then I'm going to be hit constantly because I look like somebody else. There's all kinds of separation. Go for it.
We'll have two key points. I made this joke to you earlier. The sun will supernova at some point, so it's irrelevant. But I think beyond that, also being 54, I remember all the times I renegotiated with myself what old was. And I think that's what we're going to constantly be doing, is renegotiating. So we can freak out, but the human mind is pretty elastic, and our societies are pretty elastic. And whatever we're complaining about now, we're going to look back, 20 years from now and laugh, because the next generation will already have that and adapted to the realities of that technology. No, I don't think the world's going to implode. But I think for us right now, this technology is beginning. It doesn't fully exist.
Us on stage or us in the world?
Well, you and me and them. So we're going to be playing catch up, but a couple of generations down the road, it will be normal. And so it's maybe less up to us and more up to them.
Yeah, I think creativity will become commoditized in the way that like physical labor was commoditized in the Industrial Revolution. So people were afraid, all the physical labor like blacksmith or whatever will be replaced by these massive machines that are steam powered. And it turns out you need 100 people to operate these machines versus and get a way bigger output than say 10 people doing it. So now it's going to be the creatives who are tinkering and operating the machine of pushing out 1,000 times more creativity than before, versus having less creativity or less need for creatives. So I think creatives will still have a role to play, but it's more about it's like when you're autopilot on the Tesla. Like you still are driving, you're operating the car, you're overseeing all the stuff happen. You have to be there, but it can't be there without you. Like it's going to do most of the work. You still push the buttons. You still need a pilot to take off and land a plane, but 99% of it is autopilot as well. So it's going to be something more like that, but in the creative sphere of media production, whether it's text, audio, video, stuff like that.
I'll say dystopia if we build Skynet. If we don't build Skynet, then I think it's actually going to be utopia. And I think it's really going to force the collective consciousness to raise, right? It's going to force a bunch of things to raise with it. And I truly believe it'll be utopia. Well, to the extent that it will be. But, I think it's more positive than negative is ultimately what I'm trying to say.
What's it going to make, like my 14-year-old daughter, I bought her a record player and she loves it. Is it going to be a point where man, this was written by an AI, but I sure love those days when people just write on chalkboards. And then those are going to become really popular again.
Like the wax seal on letters?
Right. Yeah, retro is always cool.
What is Skynet? Define Skynet for us. What is the dystopian version of all this stuff?
Well, I think it goes back to that automated offensive and defensive capability concept I was talking about. If that's just set loose with no boundaries and no controls, and we're not training it, then I think that's where it's going to go off the rails, and we're going to see some really negative aspects of the technology. I don't think we're going to get there, right? Because it's still maturing, and we're still teaching and training it, and that's why I think it's going to be more positive than negative.
Okay, so what do people have to do to prepare for this? Obviously, Eric's old. It's going to be hard. But what do we have to do to prepare for a world where a lot of intellectual property is created almost automatically, and we have to control for that, and we also have to manage that? And and what do we as humans have to prepare ourselves for at that point to continue feeling value implicitly? I mean, what's our value on Earth except for the creation of things of beauty? And if some robot can make, like, I don't know, some dude's face really nice automatically, what are we here for, right? So it's a little depressing, but why don't you start, John?
Interesting question. Well, I don't think it's quite that depressing. I mean, there's still going to be a need for humans, right? Humans aren't going to go away. Technology will probably become more diffuse in all parts of our life. What is our role to play, and how do we prepare? I think it's really about keeping an open mind. I think it's about becoming educated about how the technology works, and I think it's about continuing the conversation, right? We all need to participate in that conversation. We all need to shape how that's going to go, how that AI is going to work as we go forward. And, we have challenges right now with bias being implicit in a lot of AI. Well, we all have a part to play in trying to train and educate and shape that so that we can minimize the bias, so that we can make it the best possible technology that we can have. But it starts with each of us contributing, each of us keeping an open mind, and ultimately playing with the technology, right? Understand how it works and help shape how that direction is going to go.
Yeah, I think we become more editors of things. Like the creative production aspect will be infinite. But essentially, we're still the inputs of all of the original data, and we're the ones choosing the outputs that matter to us. So we're still on both sides of the equation. But there's a lot of sort of processes and people in the middle that were replaced. But then you have more needs for choosing, say, if you generate 1,000 images, which of those images are the coolest? Only a human can determine what's the coolest or looks the best or is most relevant in this context, or and maybe the AI can get better and better at that. But at the end of the day, it's taking human input, and then the output needs to be analyzed by a human and edited by a human. So I think our role goes more on the periphery of both the input and analyzing the output.
How are you preparing folks?
We're at South by Southwest, so I think when we talk about creative, we're probably a little intoxicated by our own fumes. So take it outside of creative and talk more about industrial. We were talking about the industrial revolution. If you're on a factory floor and you have an AI trying to create a safer work environment, for example, and there's a billion different variables, and an AI can come in and parse through that and create a place that's safer for people to work and be more efficient at the same time. I do think that it will. Or medicine, or curing cancer, or other things. I think we need to think beyond creative and art and all that stuff, and think about over here, what are the practical use cases? Yes, art is important, it makes us feel good. John, you made, I think, an important point. I mean, what is living if just working? There has to be something else. But we also do need to work. And so the advantages, whether you're a stockbroker or you're working on a factory floor creating automobiles, there are a lot of incredible opportunities for AI to come and make the world better, to live longer, to be happier, to fix my knees, to whatever. So I'm actually very positive and really excited to be at this moment right now. And I'm excited for my children who may be able to reap the benefits even more than me.
So I, for one, welcome our robotic overlords. Excellent. All right. Do we have any questions for these folks? We can just it's highly philosophical. There you go.
What do you think about AI being kind of like UBI, universal basis intelligence, where it's just giving everyone kind of that update, and that's how positive and negative, just making it available.
So the idea of augmented intelligence versus AI,
I don't need to know how to write anymore.
Yeah.
Because I have ChatGPT, so it's kind of like democratizing what would normally take months or years to gain a skill set. But now I can access it thanks to AI.
Well, I think it's raising the common denominator, and so everyone sort of starts from a higher place. And then it's like, what do you do with that? It's the human input to enhance that, make it better. And so it's just a different value structure of how different things will be valued in society more than others. And those levers will be pulled in different directions. And so I think we'll all be collectively smarter. It's just the same way, now everyone with Google in their pocket, you can look up any piece of information, right? So, but before, like, 20 years ago or whatever, when we didn't have iPhones plus Google, you actually had to remember things and know things and, like, be smart, But now with Google, we all have this sort of general intelligence. It's just, that's a small version of what we're going to see with this sort of artificial intelligence being a common, accessible thing.
Well, and language translation apps, right? Like that's fantastic. I can't speak really very many languages, and that's been fantastic for me. But I think it's really going to drive specialization, right? More so than what we see today. A lot of talk is we're highly specialized now, but I think this is going to force even more specialization, and I think that's where we're going to see some really interesting creative and derivative work start to come out, right? So as we fuse and merge things that we didn't think to do before because of the greater need for specialization, that's where innovation and some really cool stuff is going to come out in the future.
I'm just going to sort of repeat something you said. My only answer would be removing bias. Because right now, when we say AI, it's a misnomer. It's maybe a series of algorithms. Or if it's machine learning, or it becomes something else later on. And if someone's creating algorithms, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? You could create the most racist algorithm imaginable, right? So to democratize something, there are going to have to be multiple scenarios, multiple AIs, multiple things, self-checking. And same with Google. I grew up in a time where I was playing Moon Patrol on my Commodore 64. So, later on in life, you get Google and it's great, but we also know with social media and Google, we're getting a lot of useless information. We're getting information too fast that hasn't been peer reviewed. We're making decisions based on a TikTok. And that's dangerous. I don't know how much more dangerous we're going to get 30 years from now. Like, if anything, I look positively as something parsing that information and being able to quickly fact check whether you're getting something that's bullshit or it's something that's been peer reviewed and studied. So I think right now we're in a dangerous time. If I look forward and there's an ability to parse all that information and make us feel more comfortable that what we're absorbing is in fact a fact and true, then I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think AI really puts a magnifying glass on human nature. So it's all the good things and the bad things. Like Microsoft released a chatbot or thing that tweeted out like horrific things, and like it was like a bunch of Nazi comments and racist things, and they had to turn it off because it was like, well, it's reading like angry people on Twitter and then just regurgitating that type of nonsense. But then you have the good side of it where it's like taking the best aspects of human nature and creativity. Like, say, I love following on Instagram the AI architecture feeds, because it's like they're creating new concepts for buildings that are even better than what Zaha Hadid could have come up with, So it's like now we're all on the level playing field of being better than the best, because we've combined all the best aspects of creativity. We're like writing something, an article that's like perfectly well written and like really good. It's like, okay, you've taken like 10 of the best writers in the world and they came up with a perfectly edited thing. So now we all are on a way higher level playing field. So there's the aspect of sort of taming the bad stuff and the bad aspects of human nature, and then sort of collecting and editing and aggregating the good stuff, and trying to get the best, reap the benefits out of that.
Last word, John?
I agree, right? I've talked about raising the collective consciousness with it, and I think that's where we're headed.
All right. Excellent. Thank you very much for joining us. This has been fun. Eric, Andrew, John, thank you.
Thanks.